This is episode 32 of Adventures in Supply Chain podcast. We are pleased to present the Data and Tech in Supply Chain video series with guest Sam Gupta and host Marcia Williams. This episode is sponsored by USM Supply Chain. USM stands for Unstoppable, Scalable, Mindful Supply Chain. Check us out at usmsupplychain.com to scale up your profits together with your supply chain. Today we talk about ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning Implementation. If you are considering implementing an ERP for the first time or to switch to a different ERP with more functionalities, this episode is for you. The guest, Sam Gupta, has been an ERP thought leader in the digital transformation space for nearly 2 decades with a primary focus on financial systems and ERP. He has been part of large transformation initiatives for Fortune 500 corporations, but now spends his time consulting with SMEs as a principal consultant/CEO at Elevant IQ. Sam's deep expertise in manufacturing value chain, combined with cross-industry expertise, enable him to have higher success rate with digital transformation initiatives in the manufacturing, distribution, and retail industries. Sam regularly speaks at industry conferences and contributes his experiences through many popular blogs and publications. He also hosts a podcast called WBS Rocks, focused on business growth through digital transformation and ERP, where he interviews top influencers and executives from ERP, digital transformation, supply chain, and accounting. And now with you, your host, Marcia, and her amazing guest, Sam Gupta.
Good morning, Sam. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, Marcia, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk to your fun listeners today.
It's going to be such a great episode, Sam, because with your experience and the topic, it's going to be so great. So let's start with a brief introduction of yourself, if you could.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I have roughly 20 years in the ERP and digital transformation space, with the primary focus on the financial systems. So in the beginning of my 10 years of the career, I was doing a lot of consulting with the Fortune 500 companies. So those were more of the enterprise clients. But in last 5 to 7 years, I have primarily focused on the SMB space. So right now, I consult with a digital transformation company called Elevate IQ. And as part of Elevate IQ, we do a lot of different things. We get involved in a lot of ERP selection engagements. Then we do a lot of digital transformation optimization engagements. So the whole idea of these engagements is going to be, let's say, if you have an ERP, and in most of the cases, what we typically notice is, even though the customer may have bought an ERP, but that is not working as well as they would like to, okay? Or the adoption rate is really low. So we get involved and we are going to be looking at the processes. We are also going to be looking at the overall solution architecture and going to see what can we do from the process perspective to be able to simplify the architecture, to be able to simplify the business. And then we do a lot of net new implementation as well. So yeah, that's the ERP business. And then I'm a podcast host myself. So our podcast is called WBS Rocks. And our primary focus is really on the ERP topics. So we cover many different topics, such as your lean, digital transformation, anything and everything that actually touches the ERP, we do that. So that's about me.
That's wonderful. And I can tell you that you produce such valuable content in the episode of your podcast about costing and many other topics, very insightful. So I'm glad that you are here, of course, to talk about ERP. It cannot be a different topic. So what companies should consider an ERP implementation? What are their pain points that are like triggers? Yes, we need to take action and consider to go with an ERP.
So we will tell you what we typically see from the trigger point perspective. So when customers come to us, there are going to be certain triggers that are sort of the common ones. Number one is going to be really outgrowing their existing system. For example, a customer or the prospect may be on, let's say, QuickBooks or Zero or Zoho, and they are feeling that they are outgrowing their systems. Majority of the time, the restrictions or the limitations are really going to be from the operations perspective, because they are not able to accommodate the business scenarios that they would like to have in their system, but the system is limiting. I mean, I would not say that every time the system is going to be a reason why they have these limitations. Sometimes it's the implementation, because majority of the systems are, in my mind, fairly similar. Obviously, they are designed for specific industries, for specific business scenarios, but for the most part, the capabilities are fairly even, right? The next trigger that we typically see is going to be management change. So let's say if you have the existing management and all of a sudden the new management decides to take over. For example, let's say if you have the PE companies taking over from a lifestyle business, and lifestyle business is going to be it may be a family business, it may be a owner business owner owned business. So when the PE companies take over, they are looking for areas for efficiency, and one of the things that they typically like to do is going to be, they are going to be implementing an ERP system. The other triggers that we see is going to be, let's say if you have either the some sort of integration happening in the space. So that is going to be either you have acquired a business or you have spun off a business. Okay, so then the books that you are going to do in the consolidated manner or in the siloed manner, they are going to be different, right? So that's the third trigger. Then there are some other cases as well. For example, let's say if they have won a new contract and they are not able to accommodate their business processes as part of that, that could be another reason. But the major trigger that we see is going to be really outgrowing the current system. Sometimes we see that, okay, it's a legacy system and they are feeling that the system is very old, so they are trying to move to the newer system. That could be one case. Then the other case could be, I mean, it's very rare that somebody is going to start the journey just because they want to go to something like cloud. We see that as well, that some people or the IT managers or the business managers are familiar with the cloud technology, and they just don't feel that they just don't believe in the on-prem technology. So that could be another reason. So these are some of the reasons that we commonly see.
Great, and great points. You mentioned that it can come from operations, also operations when their current systems doesn't support their growth. And also you mentioned finance when they need to consolidate and they are acquiring new companies. So it seems like it can come from different functions within a company. Who needs to be involved in these ERP implementations, and who needs to take the lead in these transformations?
So I will tell you what we commonly see, and then I can tell you my opinion in terms of what I like to see in the ERP implementation. So typically, when I think of the ERP implementation, I am not looking at just the ERP. It's in our experience, it's more of it's going to be more of the digital transformation engagement, and typically ERP by itself is probably not going to be enough to be able to support all of the business processes, all of the scenarios. So you are probably going to require 5 to 6 different systems. So the more you align and refine your solution architecture, the more you define the roles and responsibilities of the system, the way you are going to define for your people in your organizational structure, right? The more simplified your architecture is going to be, the more supportive your system is going to be. Otherwise, you are going to have very patchy architecture. You are going to feel that people are not really using the system. So in the most common scenario, typically finance drives the transformation in most cases. Sometimes it could be IT or IT plus finance combined, depending upon how sophisticated the finance function is. If the finance function has experience implementing an ERP, then obviously they are going to be driving the
Yes.
transformation. But let's say if finance person does not have any sort of technical background and they really rely on the IT person, then IT person maybe leading the engagement with the help of the finance person. Supply chain always is involved. I mean, there is no way the ERP implementation is going to happen without the
Yes.
supply chain person involved. So they are always there. If they have a separate function called warehouse, obviously the warehouse manager is going to be involved. Then obviously your sales is going to be involved because they actually play a key
Mhm.
role in the transformation. We don't necessarily see the marketing or HR or who else is left
Mm.
in the organization. Operations is always involved. I mean,
Yes.
either your COO or somebody from the operations department, right? Marketing and HR are, it's very rare to see them in the digital transformation engagements, just because marketing is not going to have as many processes supported by the ERP system. But as I mentioned
Mhm.
towards the beginning of this question, right? So I was telling you that, in my mind, the ERP is not just the ERP, it's probably going to be a much larger digital transformation engagement. So let's say if you are a very marketing driven organization, you believe in
Mhm.
marketing automation, you are not completely dependent upon, let's say, trade shows, then obviously marketing automation and your pre-sales process and customer engagement is going to be a key function of your process. So you need to figure out, how you can align your marketing function. And again, marketing brings a
Yes.
lot of value overall in the ERP implementation. For example, their perspective is going to be different in terms of the way they look at the products, the way they look at the product offering. And let's say if you are completely disconnecting your marketing from your ERP function, what is going to happen is they are not going to get the necessary data that they really need in terms of
Mhm.
doing the, let's say, the pricing transformation. Okay, just
Yes.
based on the pricing, you could actually do a lot of things from the growth perspective, and you can, let's say, launch new products just by changing, let's say, the pricing
Yes.
or packaging. So you don't necessarily have to change anything from the product perspective, or you have to get your engineering involved in this. I mean, the only thing really you are changing is just the reconfiguration of the product,
Mhm.
and that actually changes the perception, the way your consumers or customers are going to perceive the product, and then you may be far more competitive in the market just based on that. So in my opinion, marketing should definitely be involved. Everybody should have some involvement in the process, including engineering, if you are
Yes.
going to be a very engineering heavy organization. Because a lot of times, let's say if you have R&D function, and if you don't involve them, your R&D investments may not be getting through, just because they just don't understand how the manufacturing processes are going to work. So they'll not be able to think through the process. So at least have them early on so that they understand the end-to-end perspective of the ERP. And the whole idea of ERP is, the more cross-functional knowledge you are going to provide across your departments, across your functions, the better alignment you are going to have from the organization perspective.
Excellent point, and that is precisely the beauty of the ERP, right? Instead of having those silos, we have everything together, all talking to each other. So that's the objective. And you also mentioned that the ERP implementation is not enough. We need to work on the processes and get some preparation. So, what is your recommendation? How a company can be more prepared for an ERP implementation, in particular if they are doing this for the first time?
Yeah, so in the way I like to think about this and the way I like to talk about is, your tool is a tool, right? I mean, it's not capable of doing magic for you. Okay,
Yes.
so especially the companies that are installing the ERP for the first time, they are going to think that I am buying a software package, and as soon as I install, it's going to work magically. Okay, but in case of an ERP, there are going to be thousands and if not hundreds of thousands of different configurations, and the way you configure your processes,
Mm.
right? So it's almost like the way you program. I mean, even though you are not programming, but you are still configuring and the way you are programming your business processes. Now, there are so many different ways of defining your business processes. Every data object that you are going to have is going to have tons and tons of dependencies, right? So the way you structure your data, the way you structure your processes, that is going to drive whether your ERP implementation is going to be efficient or not. So now coming back to my point about 20% and 80%. Now 20% is going to be really your technology, how you structure your data, how you streamline your processes, how you streamline your data points. Let me give you an example. We had a customer, okay, and this customer had, let's say, from the chart of account perspective, let's talk the finance and accounting. Now you can design your accounting to be very simple, or you can make it very complex depending upon how you want to operate, right? Obviously the insight is great, but getting into the nitty-gritty of the accounting is not the best use of your company's resources and time. So you really want to simplify it in a way that you are really focused on customer focused activities, and you are focused on the revenue focused activities. So in this particular organization, just because they were, let's say, on the smaller accounting system, I think they were on QuickBooks in this specific example, just because they did not have the core analytics function that typically ERP systems provide, they had more than 600 chart of accounts, okay? And more than 600 chart of accounts. And now when they obviously they had problems, and that's why they wanted to install an ERP. Now what they were thinking is, you know what, I have my 600 chart of accounts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to import them as it is. I'm not going to make any changes in the processes. So what is going to happen with that? This is, initially you had 600 chart of accounts because the limitation of your system was driving the verbosity of the chart of accounts, right? So your limitation of the systems are going to be driving a lot of different processes, and that's how you will be doing the business, just because you had no other way of doing that. Everybody started doing that, and that became your culture. Okay, that's how most companies are, right? For example, let's say if you talk about how many payment terms do you accept. Now, if you talk to companies, sometimes they might not even know about it. They might not even have these standard processes written down, right? So sometimes they are going to accept, let's say hundreds of payment terms. And I really don't know if you need all of those payment terms, because what you could do is you can simplify your processes. You can negotiate with your vendors that, you know what, Mr. Vendor, I mean, look, I have my 5 payment terms or 10 payment terms or 15 payment terms, whatever is going to be like the 80-20% rule, right? So you can negotiate these things with them. Now, coming back to my point about the chart of accounts. Now, if you import everything, the way your customers were structured in your existing system, the way your chart of accounts were structured in your existing system, the way your planning was done in the existing system, if you try to replicate that as is in your new system, doesn't matter which system you are utilizing, okay, even if it could be the most fanciest system that you may ever get, or it may be the most expensive, here's what's going to happen. The system is not going to work. Number one, you have not aligned your processes with the way the system was designed. So you need to restructure, rethink your processes based on the design of the system. Any technology system, and I'm not talking about just the software, even in case of hardware, right? The system design consideration needs to be thought out, okay? The system is based on certain assumptions. It's based on certain variables. So if you are not designing your systems based on those variables in mind, the system will not be performing at the optimum level. And this is the mistake I would say 95% of the businesses make. They just feel that ERP system is some sort of magic wand. I'm gonna wave it, and everything is gonna work as is. It doesn't work that way. Okay, it's really 20%. The system is the enabler. It's really up to you how you want to program your business rules, how you want to configure your business process. The more simplified your business processes are, the better your system is going to perform. I'll give you one more story from yesterday. Okay, there was a comment, okay, that one leading ERP system, and again, I have nothing against any vendor or any ERP system, okay? So there was a comment. I was talking to one of the guys, and he mentioned that he's expert of digital transformation, which is great. And then as a business, what they decided to do is they decided to utilize some of these web portals. The reason for that is, and the primary reason for that is because they felt that the ERP system that they were using took 8.5 minutes to be able to create a sales order. Can you believe this? Okay, I don't know any ERP system on the face of this earth, okay, that is going to take 8.5 minutes. And I am going to be very bold in claiming that, because even if the ERP system could be super terrible, the technology could be super terrible, okay, but still, it's the configuration that drives the time of your sales order. So it must be the configuration issue. And, if somebody says that, what, the ERP system is taking 8.5 minutes to just create the order. I'm not even talking about processing of order, just entering the sales order. Can you believe this? Ideally, in any ERP system, doesn't matter which ERP system that is, okay, you should have 2 clicks or maybe 3 clicks or 3 data point. The only thing you really need is the customer name that you need to select. You need your product name, the product that your line items. Let's say if you have 2 or 3 different line items of quantity. That's how simple the ERP systems are designed. And again, I don't know an ERP system that is not going to have all of these capabilities to be able to enter only these 3 data points and create that sales order. So what they instead started doing is they are spending tons and tons of money in development and maintaining these web portals, because they feel that the web portals are going to be really easy for the salespeople. So obviously, tons and tons of development and maintenance, and then you have these fancy portals. Obviously, because of that, you are going to have data integrity issues. You are going to have data sync issues, and it's going to be a chaos. It's going to be a nightmare. Okay, so again, understand where the real limitations are. If you are utilizing an ERP system, there is a reason why you are installing an ERP system. Install because you really appreciate and embrace, and ask your people to embrace the ERP system. And again, irrespective of whether you design your own portals or somebody else's, okay, if you have chaos, if you don't understand how software works, it's still going to be chaos. The only difference is going to be you would have spent $1 million in developing.
And those examples are perfect, because I can think of, like, when you were mentioning so many chart of accounts, it's like to get all of that added complexity that wasn't necessary, was because of the limitations of the existing ERP, and then just get all of that and dump into a new one that has like great potential. So of course, as you were saying, it's not going to work. At the end, you are not following the original purpose, that first we need to simplify and not add what is not working. We need to keep what is working, but not what is not. And you're right, sometimes, like with the companies, and we don't know why we arrive at what we have today. So no, excellent point, that we need to think about that. And that's why an ERP implementation implies more. It goes beyond just to get an ERP system and start using it. That is not the case, because you don't get all the functionalities. So Sam, what other challenges and common errors have you seen, so we can be aware of those and avoid them?
Yeah, so when you talk about challenges, I need to know a little bit more about, what kind of challenges you are talking about. Are you talking about more in terms of the decision-making process when you install an ERP system? Are you talking about more of the challenges that you are going to face during the implementation phase? Or are you talking about the errors that you are going to get if the implementation does not go well? So if you could clarify a little bit more, I would be happy to provide tons and tons of stories in each of those areas.
I see that we have many more challenges. We have enough. About the challenges in particular during the implementation. So let's say that a company starts, and then, well, they have their project plan, and there will be some items that can come up that are unexpected.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge you are always going to get is, let's say if this is your first time doing the ERP implementation. Okay, it's almost like first time getting married, to be honest. Okay, you are going to get tons and tons of surprises. Okay, you will not know how much effort and how financially you need to be prepared to get married. The same thing goes in having kids as well. I'm pretty sure you remember, Marsha. I don't know if you have kids or not. When you have kids,
Yes.
everybody's going to tell you, you know what, this is just a 3 months project. And then the next day, you know that, you know what, even after 2 years, you are still struggling. And finally, you start embracing that, you know what, this is how the life is. Okay. So when it comes to the challenge, ERP implementations are exact same. Okay, they are almost like wedding. They are almost like getting married. They are almost like having kids. And the reason for that is because, it's going to be the people. Okay, that is
Yes.
going to be the biggest problem. And I'm not talking about people, of the organization. It could be people. People are people. Whether you are
Yes.
working with vendors, whether you are working with consultants, some people like to blame. You know what? These ERP consultants don't know what they are doing, and they just keep
That's
complaining.
a,
End of the day, it is one team. It is always one team,
yes.
right? So when you put multiple people in the room, you are always going to have the challenges in aligning those people. So obviously,
Mm,
it comes down to your leadership. How powerful your leadership is, and
yes.
how informed your leadership is. Okay, the only
Yes.
places where I have personally seen less challenges is going to be when the team has a lot of experience implementing an
Mm,
ERP. And even then, okay, even then, they are going to have tons and tons of challenges, because obviously they are going to write the process the way they think of the processes. Again, it's the basic leadership model. Okay, so the challenges that you have seen in any large team, or in any transformation, or any project,
yes.
those are going to be the exact same challenge in case of an ERP. Doesn't matter whether you invest $1 million
Mm.
or $100,000. Okay, so one thing that you can do to make the process easy for you is, please don't go for things like, you know what, I have got end of year discount. Okay,
Yes.
and I am installing an ERP just because I'm getting a 20% discount, or my ERP implementation is going to be done in $30,000. I can promise you this. Okay, anybody who's listening to this show, okay, ERP implementations don't work that way. Okay, that is going to be a sales pitch. Again, salespeople are trying to do their job. I understand. I completely empathize with them. But the way ERP implementation is not just the software technology.
No.
If it requires far more training, and you can't short circuit the training. You can't short circuit the learning. And I'll tell you one of the comment that I got from like super sharp team. Okay, and this team, they were very technically savvy. They
Mm,
are one of the fastest growing companies of Canada. So obviously the team
mm,
is super sharp. If you talk to them, they are brilliant people, like super
yes.
brilliant people.
Yes.
Okay, they understood their business. They have a huge command in e-commerce. In fact, I mean, see, the whole
Mm.
e-commerce infrastructure, they actually designed by themselves. Okay,
Oh,
so super brilliant team, super smart team, super collaborative. But when they started implementing an ERP, initially they were like, okay, I have no idea why ERP implementation costs so much. I have no idea why ERP implementations are so complex. We started doing this engagement. After a month or two, these guys started feeling that the ERP implementation, it doesn't matter which tool or which vendor, I'm not talking about a specific tool or vendor.
yes.
ERP implementation is almost like learning a new language. And
Yes.
I don't know a person on the face of this earth who can learn a language in 45 days or 2 months. There is no way. There is no way.
No.
Our brains do not work that way. So if somebody is claiming that they have implemented an ERP system in 30 days or 45 days, I can promise you this much. Okay, they don't know
Yeah.
what they are talking about. Okay.
Yes, yes. No, yes, it's a time frame that is not possible. It's what everyone would like to hear, but it's not the reality.
Yeah, so yeah, you need to be kind with your people. End of the day, these are going to be the people who are working on the shop floor. These are
Mhm.
going to be people who are going to be working in your warehouse. These are going to be people who are going to be doing the ARAP accounting for you. These are going to be the people who are going to be doing the procurement for you. These are going to be the people who are going to be running the plant. And if they are not trained enough, you really cannot expedite the training.
Yes.
There is no way. And when you are talking about learning a new language, you cannot do that. Okay, even if you simplify the system, even if you design the perfect system, you still require ton of time in understanding your own data, in refining the process, in doing the training. So be kind to yourself. And when you
Yes.
are doing the ERP implementation for the first time, just embrace that it does take time. It does require a little bit of money. Okay, if you do it right, then you'll be getting a lot of benefits. But you need to
Yes.
understand how ERP implementation works. And if you don't have that expertise, hire somebody who has done a lot of them. The more they
Yes.
have done, the more they will be cautious. The more they'll be skeptical.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and it's going to be more cost effective at the end, considering because mistakes imply cost, right? So then, if you do it wrong initially, then you need to reconfigure everything. And
Yeah, and
also, the people start losing confidence in the system. They are not adopting the ERP. And then at the end, you don't have anyone or using the system, and then everyone has each own spreadsheet. So we don't want that to happen because that is very bad, right?
yeah, and you are absolutely right. The reason why ERP systems are very hard is because of the business rules, because of the accounting. I mean, if somebody says that accounting is easy, no, it is not. It's designed to be hard because you have the financial controls in the company. You need financial controls. So, I take an example of, when anybody who has driven only in the developing countries, and all of a sudden, if they are going to be come to the developed country, the driving is going to be hard, because in the developing country, even if you kill somebody, nobody's going to mind that.
Mm,
That's how the traffic works. But when you come here, you have to go through the process of learning a new language. That is
yes.
called your traffic rules. That is called your driving rules, so that we are saving lives. Now, the same analogy applies to your ERP systems as well. When you are following a lot of different rules, and these rules actually drive the tightness of your business objects inside your ERP system. They actually drive the relationship between these objects, right? So the way you enter your data, that is actually going to drive how your processes are going to behave. There is tons and tons of
Yes.
dependency in the ERP system. And the reason why that dependency exists is because they are trying to make the processes easy for you, so
Yes.
that you don't have to enter million data points when you are entering a
Exactly.
simple sales order. Now, the configuration of that data could be slightly more difficult. Now, understanding that configuration requires going back to your process, having super deep
Yes.
understanding of your business, and refining your processes. If you don't refine your processes, again, the system is not going to behave to its potential.
Exactly, exactly. I cannot agree more with you, Sam. So this has been such a great conversation, very insightful. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience?
I do have. So, yeah, anybody who's starting the ERP journey for the first time, I would highly recommend that, if you cannot afford a consultant, and this consultant needs to have a lot of different expertise. It's not going to be just one product from the ERP perspective. They need to understand the entire solution architecture. Typically, these people are very hard to find, just because this requires a lot of cross-functional expertise. They need to be expert at accounting. They need to be expert at supply chain. They need to be expert at sales and marketing. They need to be expert at pretty much everything that you are doing in your company. And they need to understand, your industry as well, because each industry is going to have the specific processes, right? So my recommendation to you is going to be, let's say, if you cannot afford a consultant, and yes, I completely understand, how some of these small to medium sized businesses are going to be, do as much research as you can. Read about it. Be
Yeah,
informed. Don't ignore the
yeah,
advice that people are providing. Okay. Be like a student. Okay.
yeah.
Really study why things work in a certain way. Even if you implement an ERP, after that also you have to work hard. So why not work hard in the beginning? Why not
Yes.
simplify the process, from the beginning? So do a lot of research. talk to somebody who knows what they have done, as opposed to talking to somebody who may not have as much experience overall in refining the organizational processes and the ERP system. So research, and research is what I can say.
Great, Sam. Great. It was such a pleasure to have you. And I know that many companies are looking for help. And after listening to this episode, they can see that an ERP implementation is complex, but also brings many benefits. So, what is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super active on LinkedIn, as you know, super popular on LinkedIn. So the best way to look me up is going to be Sam Gupta. It's going to be SAM is the first name. It can't get more easier than that. And the last name is Gupta. And you can contact me on the company that is going to be Elevate IQ. It's ELEVAT IQ. There is no E at the end in the word Elevate. And then also the podcast is called WBS Rocks. It's WBS ROCKS. And they have the contact form. If you contact there, then one of my team member will help you get in touch with me.
Perfect, perfect. And thank you so much. It has been great. And thank you for all the help that you have provided here. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Marsha, for having me. I loved your interview style. The show was amazing. Thank you so much for having me.